Welcome to the Upshot, Multi-World Disc Golf's podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. I'm the editor, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me, Josh Mansfield. It is Thursday, March 23rd, and we are getting ready for our first silver event of 2023. It is the Innova Open at Texas States, which we will now call Texas States for the rest of the show. Josh, we've got a fun one today. We're going to do a little mailbag. And we're going to be talking with Cole Redalen, who's been off to a great start this season, one of the most promising up-and-coming young players. And I don't think he's ever been on the show. So looking forward to chatting with Cole in a little bit. And Josh, before we jump into everything else, did you get a chance to watch the World Baseball Classic at all?
I did. I jumped, well, not a lot. I jumped on in the 8th inning because I saw how close it was. And so I just I went over, I was doing something else on my computer. I just pulled it up on my second screen. And remember, I am tragically an Angels fan.
God.
So watching Ohtani strike out Mike Trout was a lot of fun for me.
You know, it's nice for those guys to experience like a truly meaningful baseball situation where like there were stakes and it mattered.
I literally thought to myself when Mike Trout struck out, I'm like, well, there goes his only chance at a ring.
Oh, no. Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. Like, I feel like I want something in disc golf that approaches this. You know, we don't have... Now, obviously, baseball is a team sport, right? It's a different thing. But, like, the representation of the country, we just don't really have that in disc golf. I mean, yes, yeah. I know we have, you know, the President's Cup, but like it's not treated seriously in any way. And it's not country based, it's continental. You know, and I also understand that right now in disc golf, there's not really enough total population of, you know, players to have a, you know, a country based title contest. I mean, yeah, you could make one, but it wouldn't feel like it was very meaningful. I guess I'm just hoping that we can get to the point where we can have some kind of, you know, maybe it's USA versus Europe or USA versus world that feels like it has stakes and matters, because it's just so much fun for these sporting events that are typically done by club teams or whatever to have an international competition. I mean, look at all of them, right? World Cup, it's amazing. Olympics, it's amazing. Yep. World Baseball Classic, honestly, like, had great ratings and it was super fun. I would just love to see something like that come to disc golf, and it, you know, just even if it's once every 4 years, like these other events.
I don't remember if it was you or if it was a listener that emailed in when we were talking about this last, because we were doing, it was on our Sports Envy show.
Oh, yes.
And I said I wanted a World Cup of disc golf. And someone, I think it was someone else who emailed in, and I apologize, I can't give credit, it's too far back. But someone said that we should do it like the Little League World Series, where you have two sides of the bracket where you do states from the United States that are all competing, and then the top winners from those states represent versus countries on the other side of the bracket. So it could be like Texas, Kansas, Finland, Norway, and that's what the finals is. I love that idea. I think it's perfect. I think it's perfect where disc golf's at right now, and I would love to watch that format.
I mean, if you put something like that into the schedule of the tour, you know, have it in the United States, put it into the tour, you know, geographically logical, all that, and give some money to the winners, I think you could definitely put together a tournament. I think that could be so much fun. You know, we already have some of those more like exhibition-y type events with the match play championships and, you know, the All-Star weekend and whatnot. This would be along those lines. And I think it could be just an absolute ton of fun. And like gives somebody like, you have a reason to root for a team that's not because you like the players necessarily, but because they like represent your country or your state. I think that could be cool. Anyway, a little bit of news coming out right now. The Champions Cup, Josh, is coming up, of course. First major of the year. And the wait list is pretty long. I don't know if you saw this, but there's 20. Well, let's see. There's now currently 32 total players on the wait list. And that includes some names that you definitely know. James Conrad, Kevin Jones, Andrew Presnell, Garrett Gerthy, Andrew Marweed, Ezra Aderhold, Aaron Gossage, Luke Humphreys, Matt Dollar, Nate Perkins, Casey White, Stacey Haas, Jessica Weiss. We got a lot of top pros who are currently not in Champions Cup and at the moment have not been given any kind of accommodation by the PDGA. Now, there has been an effort from these pros to reach out to Nate Heinold, the TD, and say, what can we do here? And so far, there has not been any, indication that they're going to open up more spots. Now, I talked to Nate Heinold on Tuesday. So, we'll see. By the time the show comes out, maybe there's going to be more news here. But they're trying to do something. It's not clear exactly what that's going to be, because the idea of simply opening up more spots and just adding people, I guess, has been shot down by the PDGA staff. So, Josh, I want to talk a little bit about this, because I think it's not so much about this particular event as it is about the way this works in general. So when you are a DGPT touring player and you get a tour card, that basically gets you automatic entry into all of the DGPT events. And then if you want to drop out, you can just basically auto-register for everything. And if you want to drop out, you just take yourself out later on, closer to the event. That's pretty much what we see right now. But the majors are different because they're all managed by other organizations. So the PGA manages some. Of course, you've got European Open, USDGC, and they all kind of have their own processes. Mm-hmm. So I know I'm going long here, but I want to describe how this works so that we can then discuss it. Champions Cup gives out invitations to players who win at various events. Many of the Pro Tour events, the other majors, Am Worlds, Junior Worlds. Mm-hmm. There's a big long list of people, and you have to win to get in. It doesn't drop down like at USDGC and go to the second place finisher if the winner's already in. So those people all get an invitation. They're allowed to sign up. Currently, there's only 100 spots in MPO, 44 in FPO. So a lot of those spots got taken up by the people who got these invites. At which point they then do ratings-based registration. Pretty typical for PDGA Majors. So there was about a week time for players 10, 20 and up to sign up. Let me see if I can get the exact days here.
I've got them up for you, Charlie. Yeah, so registration opened for invites on January 30th. So those are all those players that you were describing who won based on whatever criteria. Then it opens for MPO who are 1020 and above, or FPO 930 and above, on February 6th. And then a week later, February 13th, registration opened for MPO 1000 and above and FPO 910 and above. And then February 20th became 980 and 890. I don't believe any players, I think the only players who registered who were below 1000 are ones who received invites for amateur-based events. That is my understanding as well.
Ilk and Grow, for example. There were 4 sub 1,000 rated players in the field and MPO. 3 of them got in from winning a tournament and having a direct invitation. One of them had their rating drop from above 1,000 to below 1,000 after they registered.
Okay, there it is.
So, obviously, there are some players on this list who have a rating above 1020 and simply didn't register on time. Some of the players who are rated above 1,000 did attempt to register on time and didn't get in because it was like race to click, basically. Mm-hmm. So I know Luke Humphreys is in that camp. He was only a few minutes after the opening of registration and ended up on the wait list. So this is the situation. The players are complaining because they feel like the PDGA didn't communicate enough about the registration being open. So to be clear, there was a PDGA website post about it. There was a Disc Golf Scene post about it. That's where the registration typically takes place. And then there were some Facebook posts. So players were like, why didn't you email us Why were we not given any indication here? Because I want to again emphasize that for 95% of tournaments, the touring professional players get basically auto-registered and are, like it's catering to them, right? And then we have this major where it's not working that way. The players were not contacted ahead of time directly, and there's obviously been a wide range of reactions to this. So the question is, Josh, number one, is this on the players to simply manage the registration processes, because this is the primary thing that they have to do as their job? Or do you think the PDGA screwed up and needs to do a better job of communicating and making sure that top players like multi-time major winner and world champion James Conrad are in the field?
Man, Charlie, that was quite the statement there on that last one.
No, I mean, I want to just, I know I'm putting my thumb on the scale with the way that I set that up a little bit, but I just want to make sure that it's clear, like
the implications.
Yes, you're going to be missing, and like I guess some people are going to say, well, cry me a river about these 10, 15 rated pros. Who cares? But yeah, like, what's your thoughts? Like, obviously, the PDGA had this tournament. The registration dates were on Disc Golf Scene or on the PDGA. The players just didn't register on time. Like, should there be sympathy there? Should they be accommodated even though they didn't sign up when most of their peers did?
For the 10-20 plus group, I have a hard time managing that sympathy, because I think it is pretty clear and outlined about when these registration dates are. And I think that here's what is significant to me. The tour card that auto registers players is not a free service. The players pay for that service. So the players are purchasing the right, and that email information, that contact, that right of registration, all those things and those perks that come with being a tour card holder is being paid for. And so I don't have this like overwhelming sympathy that, oh, well, why didn't the PDGA do the same thing? I don't know. You didn't pay the PDGA to email you with the registration open, right? And it's funny, what made me think of this is because Andrew Fish trolled one of the Twitter posts about this and tweeted that a couple of weeks ago I had offered a service to where our pros could pay me a subscription service, and I would notify them based on how far in advance registration is, depending on how much they pay me, and that he would register for them if they would pay him registration fees plus 10%. And I think it's clever. It's a funny tweet, right? But more importantly, it highlights that this is a service that's provided by the Pro Tour that the touring players pay for. And there is a entertainment value to the Pro Tour in having even some of the 10-15 players there, right? There are 10-15 players who can pop up and perform well.
And win a tournament once in a while. I mean,
and win a tournament. Right. And there is value in the Pro Tour in ensuring that those people are there. There's value for James Conrad being at the Pro Tour that is like monetary value. The PDGA doesn't have that same incentive structure. To an extent it does. So sure, they're going to sell spectator tickets, but the PDGA is about running this major, and they're running it in the same way that they always have. And so what I will say, for the people above 10-20, I don't feel terribly bad. I think it's on them. For the people below 10-20 who are just in like the clicking race, I think maybe you do and maybe you do this for above 10-20 as well. You have 1 week to register, and then after that week, they sort you by rating and then create the waitlist cutoff. So as long as you register during that time frame, they then are sorted by rating, and those who are the lowest fall off. Rather than, I'm 1,000 exactly, and just because I click faster, I'm ahead of the 10-19 guy. That seems like the fairest way to me in order to determine a waitlist for something like a major. But I have a hard time. I think it's a problem that James Conrad is not in this field. But I have a really hard time garnering sympathy for it because, like, I don't know. I look up my tournaments, and maybe this isn't apples to apples, but I save my tournaments. I put alarms in my phone about when registration is, whenever I want to register for A tiers that I know are going to fill up quick. And so if you know that, like, okay, with the Champions Cup, I'm going to need to do that. I don't know. I really am having a hard time garnering the kind of sympathy that I think they're looking for.
Here's my thoughts on the matter. Okay, so you said something a second ago that I think gets to the heart of the issue. You said the PDGA is doing registration for this like they always have done registration for this. And I think we need to recognize that things have changed. The sport is different now, and the legitimacy of the major itself will come into some amount of question if you are missing a significant chunk of top players who tour the world professionally and have been the faces of your organization on your website. Okay? To me, if you have this many people who missed out on registration, there was a breakdown in the communication process about the registration. Maybe that's, I think on principle, what you're saying is right. And the players have the responsibility to know when the registration is, set an alarm, and make sure it gets done. And you could even argue that their agent, their manufacturing sponsor, and other people who are involved with them in some way should make sure that the players get registered for the majors. I think that's very reasonable. On the other hand, why is there not direct communication happening with, tour card holders, PDGA Premier Professionals or whatever they call it? Like, why is there not just an email going out to those people? Like, to me, the whole point of the major is to have the best players there, the same that we have them at all of the DGPT events. And like, why isn't there like a cross communication happening there to ensure that these players are going to be able to compete? As a fan who wants to watch this major championship, I do not care about the like random 1,002 rated players who don't tour, who got in. I don't like fine. Try to open up more spots if you can, but like, I want to watch the top players. Mm-hmm. I want James Conrad and Kevin Jones to be in the field. It will not feel like a good outcome to me if they're not in the field. And that's going to mean having to do something to accommodate them, even though they're the ones who didn't pay attention to the registration. But the thing is, like, why would you want to be obstinate on this point as opposed to finding a solution for them? That's my point. Because the whole, like, if the PDGA wants to run pro MPO and FPO majors, they need to treat it like a top level pro tour event. And I mean that when it comes to U.S. women's and the level of professionalism of that event needing to go up. And I mean it when it comes to Champions Cup. And I mean it when it comes to the World Championships. And on and on. So I don't think the PDGA has done anything wrong necessarily, but they clearly need to look at the process by which communication is happening here. And I can hold in my mind at the same time that these players made a mistake. They don't really have a leg to stand on. If the PDGA wants to stick to their guns and say, too bad you didn't sign up, you had a chance to sign up and you didn't, that's their prerogative. But I think it would be a mistake for them to do that, given that the whole point of this tournament is to watch the best players compete.
I actually think that, Charlie, you don't go quite far enough at the heart of the issue, because just listening to what you're saying, I think if you go a little further, I don't think the PDGA does a good enough job in how it addresses amateur versus professional level disc golf. And that's a critique that we've heard before about the PDGA and about how their rules, their focus, their mission, it's broad, right? And golf has a very clear distinction in terms of like where you have the US, is it USA, US?
There's the USGA
amateur golf, USGA,
and then there's the PGA Tour, and then there's I don't know. There's a bazillion things.
There are, but there are organizations dedicated to amateur side.
True.
And to prioritizing the amateur side. And the problem is that I think that the PDGA has written and built these rules around a inclusive everybody, right? It's
yes.
Non-discriminate,
yes.
right? What they need is a professional designation that then can discriminate very easily and say anybody who is above a 10-10 rated or 10-20 rated is going to receive an email from us. They are going to be put into a special server. They are going to get first dibs on all majors. They are going
100%.
to be right. This.
100%.
And the problem isn't just the major. It goes further than that in the sense that my MA3 tournament or MA2 tournament or MA1 tournament is going to be treated the same as professional level events at times, in certain aspects. And that's the problem, I think, at the real heart of the issue. And so I agree. I agree that the PDGA is like, it's a bad look and that the legitimacy of this major is going to be questioned when James Conrad is not playing at WR Jackson, a tournament that I think James Conrad could win. And that is a problem, but I think you and I are probably pretty close on the same page here on all things can be true.
My expectation is that this is going to get resolved one way or another. Maybe not for every single player on the wait list, but James Conrad's going to play. I don't know how that's going to manifest, but like it would be foolish for that not to get resolved. Kevin Jones, these top players, and again, you can be like, lack of personal responsibility. They screwed it up. Yeah, they did screw it up. But okay, like these are the celebrities of disc golf. You have to cater to them. I'm serious. Like it's not the 10 years ago disc golf anymore. And I think it's okay with me that players are treated as, this is their livelihood and they should be accommodated as much as possible within reason, of course. But I don't think it's unreasonable to look at this. If you're at the PDGA, you need to look at this and you need to be like, well, that's a lot of top level players that didn't sign up. Like we must have not communicated this well enough. I mean, that should be the outcome in their mind of this process. It's one thing if one or two people don't sign up. When you're seeing like 15 top level players who didn't sign up or like got boxed out because of the, not signing up quickly enough, that doesn't sit right with me.
So looking at that list, it looks like it's 6 or 7 guys who are above the 10-20 mark. The other ones probably lost the refresh Olympics to get in. I've never liked the refresh Olympics as the way of determining if you get to play a tournament or not. So that's on the hard side. But 7 players, it is a breakdown, but it's not quite as bad as the 27 that it looks like. But I think it's the names of those 7 people that really you see them and you're like, wow, I can't believe they're not going to be playing. So I definitely a story I'm going to be watching.
Very interesting. Very interesting. We'll see what happens. I'm sure it's all going to work out. It always does. But I mean, I think this is still just one of those vestiges of like the changing world of pro disc golf and how the PDGA is not really administering much of pro disc golf at this point. But then we have these little points of friction like this. So
at the most important,
that's the whole. Thank you. Let's move on. Let's look at some mail. We're gonna do a little mailbag. So let's go ahead and dive in here, Josh. I'll pull one out.
Okay.
Let's see. Let's talk about the majors while we're on the topic. This one comes from John. He is curious on our opinions on the current majors format. It looks like 3 of the 4 majors are shaping up to stay at the same location each year. Pierce Champions Cup is staying at WR Jackson. USDGC is at Winthrop for the immediate future, and I haven't seen anything suggesting the European Open is leaving the beast. Is Worlds as the only traveling major enough? What do you think, Josh?
I think that the problem is that these courses have, when you look at each of these courses, WR Jackson, it's at the International Disc Golf Center. I think it's a very appropriate location to hold a disc golf tournament and the Champions Cup. It feels very natural. There are a lot of things about that I like it being there. USDGC, we've talked about, possibly moving away from Winthrop, but there is something about the history there. And more importantly, it's a venue that can really host the kind of tournament that I think is deserving, that a U.S. championship is deserving of. The mounted cameras on 17, the mounted cameras on other holes, the number of spectators they're able to accommodate, things like that make Winthrop a good location for that. I like Worlds changing, but the problem right now, it's twofold. Number one, finding tournament directors who move and can prepare majors at different locations is becoming a more difficult task, not an easier one. That's why we see Worlds bids, for example, are not increasing, and at times other tournament directors are stepping in and hosting Worlds again. And so I think until you get a clear tournament director and staffing situation figured out for a tournament that moves, and tournament supports infrastructure, then I think that's a risk that you take by moving it away from a place with an established course and an established staff and established volunteer group who's helping. And the second part is that sometimes we pick courses that are kind of a whiff and aren't as enjoyable to watch. And there's a sense of the entertainment value at the current courses that are pretty high at those three that don't move. And I think U.S. Women's is a really good example and is excluded from this email. This focuses on the MPO side, but bring this in on the FPO side, on the U.S. Women's, and that one does move. And how many times have we complained about U.S. Women's courses? And even as early as 2 years ago, just a complete joke when it comes to courses that were selected for that tournament. And so that's a risk that you play with moving tournaments and that undermine the value and legitimacy of a major. So right now, I don't think it's a bad thing. I would be willing to say, though, as disc golf continues to develop, I think European Open jumping between countries could be a really exciting feature and just feature a different country on a 4 or 5 year rotating slate. And I think I could really enjoy that. But there are risks and complications that come along with that.
Yeah, I think the infrastructure of disc golf isn't developed enough to have more traveling majors right now. I think that's kind of like what you're saying, but I think it's not just TDs, it's also venues. But would it be, I don't know. The thing is, we already have tournaments that happen at the best courses. So if you simply replace MVP Open at Maple Hill with a major at Maple Hill, does it really feel like that's a value add overall? I mean, maybe it would be. It would be cool to have a major at some of these elite venues, but I think longer run, I think it would be nice to have more tournaments that do move around. Mm-hmm. I guess it's just which would it be? I don't have an answer to that. In my mind, you don't have to have the European Open every year, especially if you have Worlds in Europe. So you could have Worlds in Europe, and then you could have a different major that particular year, and maybe we come up with some sort of cycle on that long run where Worlds alternates between the U.S. and Europe, and then you have in the off year you have European Open, and then in the other year you have some other tournament. I don't know.
Canadian Nationals.
There's a lot of options there where you could have a little bit more variety while still maintaining a 4 major calendar and a sense of continuity and regularity. And who knows? Maybe eventually Champions Cup, it's no, it's time for this tournament to start to go to some different courses. Right now, I think WR Jackson is absolutely the right venue, and it would have been bad. They made the right decision not to move it to up to Toboggan, and they kept it at WR Jackson. It's a great course. It's the type of course we don't see on tour all that much, and so I'm a fan of that. It's a tricky question to answer because I do like some more variety, but I also think that the way things are right now is pretty good. It's the best it's been ever before because we have 4 majors now and like they're on good courses and we know what it means. And like just getting that set up first is really the key. And then we can think about whether we want to change venues.
Next email comes from Duncan. He says, I like that the Austin course was diverse. In the past, we've seen players say they like or dislike ball golf course layouts in general. Some players do better on those than woods courses. Having different players prefer one type of course to another makes for variety on tour, which might not be the best for one group of players, but enhances spectating tour as a whole. This is the next part I really like. Obviously, if the disaffected players are disproportionately those who excel at one type of course, then it's a problem. Also, if a majority of players dislike a course, it's a problem. In a case like this, complaints from a vocal minority, some of whom aren't practical contenders on any course, makes me think it deserves a place on tour even more. I think this is a really, it's a really astute point to measuring criticism of courses, because you're always going to have pros who are criticizing the courses and don't like them. But when we highlight, is it a type of player that likes them or not? And whether or not it's the majority, I think is a good way and a good kind of litmus test to how we're taking in professional feedback when we're evaluating courses. I think someone else pointed out on the FPO side that all the FPO players who really enjoyed it were the ones who could throw the furthest, which indicates that there were holes that weren't properly tuned for the field as a whole, and that some were just, it seems like a lot of them were unreachable for those who weren't the furthest throwers. And so I think Duncan provides us with a good litmus test in remembering and analysis of how pro feedback should also kind of be considered based on both their playing level, but also the numbers.
I'll add this from Jacob. He enjoyed the Austin course. While I love watching wooded courses like Northwood Black, it's always nice to be able to see how the spectators can spread out on these ball golf layouts. And thank goodness that the course was designed so that there were barely any rollers off of the tee. While hole 17 was quite unlike the rest of the course, and they probably should have removed a few more trees, it was fun to see the pros handcuffed on a 400-foot par 4 where the forgotten skill of touch was finally given time to shine. I'm not sure that I'm on board with the 17 is actually okay take, but I do think overall this was an excellent example of how to use a ball golf course facility to design a disc golf course. My complaints about the course are primarily visual and not the actual layout of the competitive, course. I think it needs more work on the FPO side, but I could say that about basically every tournament, so I'm not going to harp the point. Overall, I think the 2 emails there and many of the other ones that we received, like mostly people enjoyed seeing the challenge and the variety. And I think with more tuning, this can become a really worthy course.
The one other thing I'd add, I remember I was reading some internet comments that said that this is like a municipal golf course that's run by like the YMCA. And is pretty cheap, right? It's a really accessible golf course, and so it doesn't have the best maintenance. The fairways and the greens aren't the cleanest, and the most lush grass, and that's definitely visible on this course. But I look at that and I think of other those kind of municipal golf courses I've golfed at, and I think like, wow, like that. There probably is more leeway in what we can do on those courses, right? It's not as well maintained, so they don't mind as much, as well as the revenue loss isn't so high that this tournament becomes exorbitant, which I know Vegas, for example, has to pay a ton of money to Wild Horse in order to use that for the weekend. And so there's a balance there on those kind of municipal golf courses that I think add a real opportunity for temporary courses for more cities to be involved in the Pro Tour.
All right, I want to come back to one more major discussion point, because I think this is a great email from Aaron. He's complaining about adding a golf course to Waco, saying that we have plenty of those already. He says, wake me up when we add a technical course to a tournament that favors distance and wide open shots. We're a golf course added to Idlewild away from a crisis. But to the main point of the email, we're up to 4 majors, 15 elite events, and 11 silver events before the Tour Championship. That's a lot of tournaments. And while I'm all for having tournaments that challenge the entirety of your game to produce winners that can adapt to all challenges, I hope we create events that favor a particular aspect of the game. I want bomber tournaments and I want technical tournaments. Some that favor backhand, some that favor forehand. I want tournaments that favor hyzer flips through the woods because I like seeing the disc do different things. Maybe that could be the distinction for Elite Plus versus Elite, where Elite Plus events challenge all parts of the game and award more points. Part of the great part of tennis and golf is that their majors reward different parts of the game. For golf, US Open rewards driving. The Masters rewards long irons. The British Open rewards short irons. The PGA Championship kind of depends on the course. Tennis is the same with the different surface types. Of course, you've got French Open on clay. You've got Wimbledon on grass. And then the hard courts at US Open and Australian. We're getting there with the disc golf majors, carving out a distinct personality with each one. But I hope we can have that same philosophy at the Elite Series too. Bottom line, I want these tournaments to have personality, but with potential moves like this one at Waco, we lose something.
I think the distinction here for me and the key difference between golf and disc golf is that on a course like for the British Open, for example, the rewards short irons. I'm not into golf enough to confirm or deny that, but let's say that's the case, right? So if that's the case, the players who excel with short irons are not like local pros who are 30 rating points or whatever the PGA equivalent is below what the top professionals are. If you took a disc golf course and on the MPO side made every hole at every par 3 less than 300 feet, the level of distinction that can occur on disc golf, I think, is significantly less than in ball golf. And so to say I just want to challenge one skill, and probably not to that extreme, but I'm highlighting a point here, is that a disc golf course that only favors one skill loses key scoring separators in other aspects of the game, and each discipline in disc golf does not have the technicality or the difficulty that golf or tennis does to create that necessary separation. And so you very quickly get people whose names you have never heard of before winning majors, and that's not what we want to see. I'm sorry, I just don't think it is. It's not. It's you lose storylines. You lose who the heck is that person? You never see them again on tour, and they just show up, win that one tournament, and then go away again. Right? That is kind of exciting, but it's not something you want to see every time because the majors lose legitimacy. If the players who are overall considered the elite of the game aren't the ones winning majors because we just have a specific skill set that's tested and they're the most well-rounded players, then I think we have a problem. And so I understand the point here, and I like the idea of, distinct personalities. I think we're achieving that with majors, though. And when I look at the Elite Series, I think that is a question of, yes, there are some different flavors of it, but all in all, every course should be as well-rounded and challenging everything as possible, in my opinion, in order to determine over the course of a season who is the best, and have that entire variety. Especially with like the drop system, because if you get to a point where it's just the two sides of the tour are so distinct, someone like Eagle just is like, you know what, forget it. I'll just quit playing Waco, Texas State's, and just drops those events from his schedule, and then it just becomes a question of who collected more points on their respective stretch of the tour. I want courses and tournaments to as realistically to create the whole spectrum of skills, because I think it's the only way you get meaningful separation in disc golf.
I think obviously the lever we have to turn in disc golf is primarily how many trees are there, like open versus wooded. Like there's a reason we talk about that as a distinction, and it's a reason, and we are getting different flavors, right? Champions Cup,
we are
long, open wooded, right? Like big, wider fairways. And you have to throw it far in the woods, and you still have to, shot shape a lot. European Open, I would call it like classic disc golf course,
like park golf.
Yeah, almost. Like big shots, big holes, beautiful. You've got USDGC, which is like pressure and risk reward, and then you've got Worlds, which is gonna, is 2 courses, that test both open and wooded skills. I think that's nice. And I get the point that Aaron's making. I think that there are opportunities for Elite Series events to really focus on being their thing. But money. All right. I have to keep coming back to that. The reason Waco is thinking about adding another course is because 4 rounds makes more sense. And having, especially at a tournament like that, having a more open course where you can accommodate more spectators is how you make money. And we just simply, until we can build our own courses, we don't have a solution for that yet. There's nothing they can do with that Waco layout right now. And maybe it should just be good enough. And it's going to become an expensive ticket because there's not that many tickets available. And so if you want to go to Waco, it's kind of like the bougie tournament that you get to go to. And you got to pay $150 for your ticket. I mean, I would be okay with that. I understand Aaron's concern about it getting watered down because it's just like, well, let's just tack on an open court. It's like when they did it at Masters Cup. I mean, that was horrendous. Oh, they're like, oh, well, we don't have internet service and we don't have enough spectating lines. So we're going to take this world-class, old school course and then be like, well, let's just tack on this awful ball golf course layout. I mean, it's terrible. I get why they did it, but it was terrible. And I mean, now that tournament's off the tour, so I don't know. There's a balance between these things. And I do think tournament directors would be smart to consider their events. How do I make our thing? OTB Open, they want their thing to be Waste Management Open. They want to have party scene. I like that. I think it's okay for a tournament's key element to be spectating experience rather than perfect course. We shouldn't have them all like that, but I think that's fine. Anyway, how do you find personality for your event? I think that's a great point to take away. What else we got?
Yeah, next email comes from Sean. We actually had another major one.
Let's skip it.
So we'll just keep
we're gonna do it. Okay, let's do it.
Oh, you don't want to? I think this one's really good.
Okay, let's go.
I'll be quick though, and we'll just I'll paraphrase part of it. He says, in my opinion, the USWDGC course was the most compelling course on tour. He highlights that, it's the different skill set of FPO players, that the highest rated players were still at the top. It was compelling to watch till the end because everybody was able to score. And then he adds, I believe that disc golfers have been gaslighted. I don't know if I'd use that word, but it has been gaslighted into thinking.
Overused word in the English language right now. Go ahead.
Agreed. Into thinking that FPO courses should be really hard to score on because of how prevalent hard FPO courses are. Something that feels different or easier feels wrong. In reality, courses where the best players in the world can hit birdies makes for the best competition and viewing experiences. And provides this list. Highlights are worthy of what FPO courses need. Highlights worthy of Sports Center top 10. Birdieable holes for the majority of the field. More putter and mid-range drives and upshots. Ace runs and eagleable holes for big arms. I agree with a lot of this and think a lot of it's really, really a good input, because the problem is that a disproportionate number of FPO courses, even relative to MPO side, favor those who can throw the furthest because they're not properly tuned. The biggest problem, though, whether it's a long course or a short course, is when they don't properly adjust it for the FPO field so that the landing zones and shot making decisions are based around typical FPO distances. When it's just when they are out of reach, or it hurts scoring separation. And the reason that I think that this has become, it's in a sense tolerated or and approved of for so long, is because the sport's top players on the FPO side love this problem.
Right.
Paige, Katrina, Kristen, Holland Hanley, Ella Hansen, they benefit from these decisions to keep long courses. So when you hear those players talking about how big of it, how much they love these courses, it muddies the water around the discussion of, well, maybe that should be shorter and more scoreable for the majority of the field, because those players will never want it, but those are the ones that also have the most outsized voices. And especially given the lack of development on the FPO spectator and engagement side from a fan perspective, when I'm not going to pick a name here, but when Paige Pierce talks, her influence is 15, 20 times that of even the second tier players, which isn't quite the case at MPO because there's more depth to the fan experience, right? If Kevin Jones were to come out and say and talk poorly about courses, people listen to that and give that as much credit as they would give credit to Calvin Heimberg saying the same thing. And so I think that's another problem to highlight on that FPO side.
I mean, I just think everyone should just take a step back and be like, why is it that we're seeing MPO scores come in hot rounds around 12 down and FPO scores it's 4 down?
Mm-hmm.
And like, you could be like, well, FPO players don't putt as well as MPO players. Sure, I'll give you that. That's probably 1 or 2 strokes around of the hot round.
Sure.
But that's it. The problem is that the tuning is wrong, and I largely agree that we could have more courses that have more shorter holes that are more attackable. It's really that simple. Anyway, I think that's I don't have more to add. It's very clear to me that there's still just a general create an MPO course and then like tack on a couple different tee pads. There's like no real thought going into how to make it a good FPO layout, and I think that's too bad, and I hope that it changes. Okay, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Cole Redalen joins us right here on the Upshot.
At Pound, the quality of our gear runs deeper than the stitching. That's why we make everything right here in the U.S., employing highly skilled, well-paid professionals. From bomb-proof Cordura fabric to YKK zippers and recycled plastics, we source the highest quality U.S. materials to make the most comfortable, durable pack in disc golf. Our lifetime warranty stays with the pack, not the purchaser. So regardless of how you find us, we will be here to make sure your pack stays on the course and out of the landfill. Pound's integrity is held together with more than just thread.
Joining us now on the Upshot is Cole Redalen, who's off to a great start in the 2023 season. Got a podium finish at Waco, a couple top 10s already. Cole, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, we've been kind of watching your career unfold a little bit here for the last couple of years, and a great chance to have you on after a really nice start to the year so far. How would you assess the way that 2023 is going for you?
Yeah, I think the biggest change that I've had in my game is obviously the putting. Something that I know you guys know, and a lot of other people know, was a struggle for me last year. So that's something I worked really hard in the off season, and believe it or not, I put barely any reps on the practice basket. It was all about perfecting my swing and the way it's coming out of my hand, because I think a proper swing is way more important than reps with a bad swing, because reps with a bad swing is never going to do you any good. So something we've been working on the off season is trying to make sure that my swing is good, it's consistent, so when those pressure moments hit, I'm still able to kind of fight through it and make the putt. So I think that's probably the biggest storyline for so far this year for me is, I'm not the best putter in the world by any means, but I'm definitely upping my circle 2s and circle 1s, which is ultimately leading to a lot better scores, because I don't feel like my driving has got a heck of a ton better since last year. It's just the putting is coming in very clutch right now.
I want to ask some follow-up questions to that, because I think that's an interesting perspective that I don't know if I hear often. So when you were fixing your swing, what did you identify as the problem, and what changes did you strive to make?
Well, I think there's two types of players when it comes to putting. I think, there's like, obviously there's a push and spin putter. For me, I've always liked the spush kind of like, spinny, but also coming from low to high kind of a putt. So for me, the way the putt has come off of Paul's hand is about as clean as it gets. And that's something I've been trying to mimic my entire life. But also just most importantly, like find out what's consistent and what works for me. Cause I am taller than Paul, and it definitely does not feel the same. So Something I've been working on is keeping my wrist straight. So learning to pop the disc with my fingers more than my wrist. When you putt with your wrist, it's a little bit easier to miss left early or right too late. And so something I'm trying to figure out is how do I keep my wrist straight and pop the fingers at the basket, as almost just like I'm like just giving the disc to the basket rather than trying to flick it in. So that's probably the biggest change that I've been working on. I'm still working on, and I'm still not pleased with how it kind of looks on camera still, which but I'm definitely still evaluating, and that's the biggest thing is keeping the wrist straight and using my arm more as a lever instead of my wrist.
And then you say you really didn't do that many reps. How do you practice and perfect that then, if you're not just at a basket for hours and hours on end?
Video and yeah, I mean, just taking a video of it, and then I really just played a ton of rounds. Like every single day during the off season, I probably less than 3 days in a row I'd go out without playing, or probably 2 days, honestly. And for how bad the weather is in Oregon, it didn't really matter. I had nothing else to do. I'm graduated from high school, and I'm just going out and playing disc golf every day. So really, the practice came with playing rounds and making sure. I think once I got the mechanics down, it was like, okay, take it to the course, and can you keep these mechanics the same while dealing with elevated putts and trees in the way kind of putts? Or so really, I there were obviously times that I sat at a basket for an hour or two and kind of grinded it in, but really it just felt simple. Like once I got the swing exactly where I needed it to be, I just went out and took it on the course. And as soon as I saw success in the course, that ends up bringing more confidence, honestly, than bringing it at the practice basket. So
for reference real fast for those listening, your putting stats last season, 77% from C1X, 163rd on tour. Don't worry, because here comes the good news. 84% from C1X this season. That's good for 29th on tour. And everything around it has leveled up as well, but that stat is the most remarkable in I mean, what you've described. It's very clearly paying off. So congratulations.
Thank you.
So one of the things that I've noticed, Cole, you've put together some of the best rounds of the season so far, like period. I mean, some just absolutely monster results. I mean, round 2 at Austin was, you had one bogey and I don't remember how many birdies, a zillion birdies. But then you've also paired that with some, kind of like more up and down rounds with bigger numbers, taking bogeys and double bogeys. Of course the holy grail is to be able to play those kinds of amazing rounds every time. But how do you find a little bit more consistency in your game? Because it feels like that maybe is the missing piece keeping you from being able to start winning tournaments, because clearly you have the upside to do it. It's just about being able to bring it, round after round.
Yeah, I think Waco was honestly a good picture of that. You could argue otherwise after that final round, 14 birdies and a double and 2 bogeys. But it's still like, yeah, I feel like it's just 2 or 3 drives that cost me more than a par, and it's like, yeah, I get on a roll, and then I think for me, once the pressure hits, I start throwing harder, and I start throwing further, and which means my discs fly differently. So that means when I'm, on 17 in round 2, leading the tournament in Waco, I smash that forehand, and that disc has never flown straight forehand for me, but because I was so amped up in the moment, it came out swinging. And same on the second shot. That was probably the worst forehand you could possibly imagine for that second shot, just because I was so amped up. And so for me, I think the biggest thing will be like taking deep breaths and just being like, okay, just throw this the same as you've been throwing before, and don't get too caught up in the moment, and just keep, throwing smooth and not hard. And I think I did everything right on 12 round 2 this last weekend. 12 is the one that I bogeyed. I actually switched up the game plan from a backhand to a forehand so I'd stay in bounds on the drive, which I executed perfectly. And then the upshot, I just threw way too far. And I'm just like, oh, you should have taken a deep breath. Like, maybe kept the same disc, but, slowed it down a little bit. So I think that's probably the moments when, I take those bogeys or doubles and take me out of the hot round moments is, I'm not used to those situations. And so then I get more excited than nervous than anything. And then it just ends up, it's just one bad drive. And then all of a sudden it spirals from there. But then I birdie like 5 of the next holes after that. So right. That's like, maybe I get that bogey out of the way and then I'm like, all right, back to shred time. But yeah, it's a mystery too, but that's all I got for now.
So you said you recently graduated high school. Are you 18, 19 then? How old are you?
I'm 18. I graduated last July.
You're 18. So what are your long-term, what do you see as your future plans? Do you plan on committing to the tour for how long? Are you going to try and go to school while you do it? What does that future look like for you?
Disc golf. I think disc golf has been it for me since 2021 at Ledgestone when I took 7th place. And I really saw myself perform at the highest level there. It was kind of a sad, bittersweet tournament because that final round was canceled due to inclement weather. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to see myself finish out the tournament strong. And, there's obviously potential to move down the leaderboard, but, also move up the leaderboard. So I felt like I was kind of fortunate almost to end up in 7th for that event just because I hadn't dealt with those final round jitters yet. So when Portland Open came around last year and I ended up taking 8th, finishing pretty strong, even though I bogeyed the last hole, it was, it just, moments like that just kind of secure it. Like, yeah, this is my life. And I have this RV now, and I bought this RV across the highway from Discraft last year at D-Glow, which was a week after I actually finished high school. So I finished high school, then we drove out to D-Glow, bought an RV, and then learned how to use the RV for the remainder of last season. And then now I've essentially learned how to deal with the RV all off season with my dad. He's owned multiple RVs in his lifetime. And so, yeah, now I'm full time in it, and it's great. I feel like the last 2 years have been building up to where I am now, as far as graduating high school, finding a substantial way to travel, and not just couch ride every single week, and then obviously with the help of DGA, it just couldn't make it more possible. So
how has the bag transition and new sponsorship been for you?
Honestly, it's probably about as easy as it gets. Being an open bag last year, that was kind of the name of the game the entire year, is everybody's in every ear trying to get you to try something else, but it came with also a lot of burden and weight because, it's not just like, there's not just like this one sponsor investing in you. It's, you have signature discs with all these different companies and a lot of people to keep up and keep talking to. And, it just gets to be overwhelming. And it's not that that's a bad thing, because there's a lot of opportunity to make more money and get your name out there. But at the same time, for me in the state that I'm in, kind of similar, probably Calvin Heimberg mindset. I just want to go play disc golf. I just want to go be the best I can be on the course. And, I think someone with DGA makes that most possible. I was sponsored by Discraft in 2021. And so because Discraft makes DGA's discs, then it was kind of like a similar feel or similar, similar plastic feel. They're not the same, but it's all similar. So it was pretty easy to, and I've dabbled in DGA in the past. So, and then I actually visited the warehouse driving down from Oregon I stopped by Santa Cruz at DGA before heading over to Vegas. So I got a bunch of nice stuff, some overstable discs and drivers, and, all it took was a couple fieldwork sessions, and I felt like I was ready to go. So, I think DGA transition could not have gone better. And, I'm slowly every week, the confidence is just growing.
We speculate here on the show that going open bag, which, mostly we've seen players go the other way, right? They've gone from a single sponsor to an open bag, or at least a mixed bag. That offers opportunity because you get to throw the exact discs that you want, your favorite disc in every slot, all that kind of thing. Do you feel like that's not as much of an advantage as maybe we would think that it is as non-professional players?
I think a lot of the time it's the archer, not the arrow. I think there's certainly some cases that can be made where discs are not flying the way you expect them to, and it would be nice to be able to throw something from somewhere else. But honestly, I think there's runs of discs out there, and there's conversations to be had with the company that you're with to work with you and be like, hey, this slot needs to be filled. And I think just the better you get, and the Pauls and Rickies of the world making their own lines of discs, like, that's huge. And I don't think the open bag is honestly as big as an advantage as people think. And I think that if you know the discs that you're throwing, and as long as you know how to make that adjustment during the tournament, I don't see any reason why I wouldn't be able to succeed more than a James Proctor or Scott Withers out there who are now open bag this year. So yeah, definitely.
So we know you can't tell us exact sponsorship numbers, though we always try. So I guess we ask kind of other questions to kind of frame and get perspective on those things. We've had players come who are in your area of rating, right, in the 1020s, who tell us that if they don't cash, then they worry about being able to stay on tour. For your sponsorship, are tournament winnings a substantial part of your ability to maintain a livelihood on tour?
No. I think there's an aspect of it, but no. I mean, honestly, if I'm being real, I haven't won an A tier, and I've only ever won a B tier, and I've only ever finished top 10 on the Pro Tour. I mean, yes, now a podium because of Waco, but I haven't really shown the highest level performance that you could possibly see yet. And so for me, I just feel so fortunate to be in the situation that I'm in, and so thankful for DGA to help along. And yes, tournament winnings can help a lot, help stay comfortable. But honestly, it's not a necessity.
So I was going to bring up what you just said, which is that you haven't really won big events yet, and whether that's Elite Series, Silver, A, whatever. Like, learning to win is part of the process, I think, of becoming a champion level disc golfer. But on the other hand, you've shown a capacity to shoot the kinds of rounds that are required to be able to win. I mean, you've already done that a couple times this year. So do you think that you can be a player that is up in the conversation with some of the names that you've already been discussing today? And if so, what's it going to take to get there?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I put myself in a contention place to win the last 2 weekends. And I think, there's aspects to be learned from that. I just made my first ever Elite Series lead card last week. And thank goodness it was a final round, but I've never been under that kind of stress and pressure before. And I think it's so undermined about, being there for the first time and having all of the primary eyes on you. Because I was on chase card at Waco, and I still had a couple bad holes, but I played pretty well. But definitely the lead card pressure is something that is just so different. And it's something that I feel like I could do better to handle, but I'm also very proud of myself in the way I'm processing each and every hole and each and every round that I go by is like, what did you do right? What did you do wrong? What are we going to improve on? And I think for me, I probably go back to mechanics more than I should, because I feel like I have a pretty strong mental game, and I don't feel like I'd be where I am without one. But at the same time, like, yeah, there is a mental aspect of it, but I also feel like if you have proper mechanics, it's easier to let that pressure go, because then the mechanics just take over. But no, I absolutely believe that I will be a top player by the end of this year or by the end of next year. And, I think a lot of the years in the past have just been building blocks and stepping stones to get to where I am now. And it will continue to be that until I become more comfortable in the top 10 and at the top of the leaderboards for those final rounds. I'm just ecstatic that I even finished on the podium at Waco, after being on a card with the likes of Kyle Klein, Nate Sexton, and Paul Macbeth on a chase card within contention for the lead. Like, that's also something I've never really been, in a situation to be in. And I feel like I handled that really well. And obviously the woods of Waco and the woods of Oregon, definitely kind of go hand in hand. So it kind of played to my strengths a bit. But yeah, I just think it's a learning process. And for anybody who is just, a freak athlete like Gannon Burr, who can just go out there and make every clutch play that you can possibly imagine. That's a once in a lifetime kind of guy. I think there's a learning process and there's learning curves, and I'm going through them right now, and it is what it is. And I'm going to keep going at it until I get to that top spot.
I want to ask you, there's a lot of really promising young players on tour. I mean, obviously Gannon at the top of that list, Kyle Klein, maybe right there as well. I'm sure I could come up with some even younger player, Evan Scott, looks like he could be a great player someday. And so do you notice a difference between this generation of players who's in their late teenage years, and then the 30-year-olds on tour who have been dominating the sport for 10 years, your Pauls, your Rickies, etc.? Do you see a difference in your game, your style, your approach that you've noticed?
I feel like when you get to the top level, it's a lot of it is the same. You just want to win, and you're there to win, and you're there to do your job, and that's all that it is. I don't feel like it gets much different than that. I can't imagine playing at the top of the game and being like, oh, this is like so cool. Like I can't even believe that I'm here. It's like, that's not the mindset you want to be having, or I really feel like I've seen anybody having. I think anybody there I see on the course is like frustrated when they miss a 30-footer. Like, no, like this is it. Like, this is where I need to perform. So really, I don't think it matters who I am, or who you are, or how young or how old you are. If you're competing at the top of the game, you're trying to do the best that you possibly can to win this tournament. And I think, there is a top of the list for young guns and that kind of category for me, Kyle and Gannon, and, anybody else in that category. And my great friend Ty Love back home, who you've probably seen spots of on coverage. And he hasn't graduated high school yet, but he will be soon. I can't wait for him to get out on tour. But really, once you get out on tour, that's when you start getting better. Because I know so many, Broston Watt of Arizona, Kai Kim, and just other players who are my age that want to tour full time. But I'm like, you guys just got to get on tour, and you got to stay on tour. And as hard as it is now with all these DGPT regulations and everything, it's like, okay, what are you doing at home to get better so that you can qualify for the tour? Okay, now what are you doing in order to succeed on tour? So I think there's a lot of building blocks and a lot of things that maybe people don't even keep in mind that you have to go through in order to tour full time. They're like, oh, I just need to get out there and play and I'm going to kill it. It's like, you can't shoot a 12 under out here very easily. You can shoot a 12 under at home as easy as it gets, but as soon as you get on tour, like, it took me a couple of years in order to do that. So
interesting that you chose 12 under as your number there after the Open at Austin round. There are natural rivalries that build in the sport that typically occur at the top of the sport. Ricky and Paul, for example, I think is the most notable one. But now, Paige and Katrina, Paige and Kristen, Kristen and Katrina, however you want to frame that. But I know in my personal experience, when I play tournaments, I find somebody who's around my level who plays a lot at the local circuit, and I'm like, that's the guy I want to beat. So Cole, do you have somebody that you put in your mind as like a rival that you're like, I want to try and finish ahead of Kyle Klein every week, or somebody else that you see as your quote unquote rival?
Rival and friend.
Sure.
Ty and I have been friends since 2017, 16. We met at the Beaver State Fling at a chapel service, and we were both just little kids, like, 11 or 12 years old, just, shooting 870 rated rounds. And we've pushed each other so far to get to where we are, and to now the 1020 rated and touring, and it's just crazy, and how competitive that we have been. Like, there's sometimes that I will go over. He lives in Oregon too, but he lives 3.5 hours away from me. He's in more Central Oregon, so I'll go over there and I'll spend a few days with him, and it's so competitive every time we go play the course. It's like, I just want to be playing with my friend right now, but it's impossible because we just want to beat each other so bad, and we just push each other to be better so much. And so, honestly, I don't think I'd be where I am without him. So as much as somebody I want to beat, it's him. And if there's someone I want to be my friend all the time, it's him. So, I can't wait for people to see more of him because he's such a talented player as well.
So Champions Cup is right around the corner, first major of the year. I don't know if that has the Portland feel, the Oregon feel. How would you assess the course and your chances there?
I think putting really got in the way of me at that tournament last year. I think I threw the disc really well. I think I was top 10 or top 5 or something in greens and regulation for that event last year. I remember just smoking hot off the tee. I just couldn't do anything on the green. So I think that's going to be super important for me. And I really love my chances at Champions Cup this year. That is definitely wooded, and it's not as tight as Oregon, but it's wooded. And I feel like in the woods, I'm really good at picking my aiming points and hitting them properly. So I'm actually really excited for Champions Cup, but I also have my doubts because, I played there last year with probably a similar mindset. The putting's a lot better this year, but as far as off the tee and giving myself opportunities, it feels kind of the same. So, I don't know. I just excited to get back there we'll see how practice goes. But yeah, I do. I think I like my chances on any course. Honestly, I feel like I got a pretty well-rounded game. It just needs to be a little sharper. So,
why don't you help us do our preview of the Innova Open at Texas States, aka Texas States? It's coming up this weekend, and we've got 2 separate courses, MPO and FPO. It is a 9,879-foot MPO layout, par 63, 77.96 in FPO on 2 completely separate courses. What do you think of the MPO course that you've seen so far, and are you looking forward to this one?
I actually really like it. It is long, and it's long with low ceilings. So for someone like a Florida golfer, like a Calvin Heimberger or a Randon Lotta, you're going to be probably watching those players throw low laced drives. There's a lot of low ceilings out there, and there's a lot of 700, 800 foot par 4s that you have to smash. So, and it's a lot of walking, a lot of walkouts to the next holes, multiple par 5s and par 4s. I could probably fit in one hand how many par 3s are on that course. The grass is a little long, which I think will convert to more like sticky greens. So when somebody hits next to the basket, it'll most likely stay there. I think the design is good and it has a lot of potential. I just like to see the course a little bit more cleaned up. But I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be really exciting. I've been playing with a split finger index finger since Vegas. So, grip has been kind of an issue for me lately, which is crazy for how I performed last week. And you saw Paul Macbeth, I'm sure, split his finger as well. But I don't know why. There are a lot of players are dealing with little cuts and things on their hands right now. And, that just might be the dryness of everything. But no, I think this weekend's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it. The course looks really good. It can be cleaned up a little bit more, but it's going to produce some really exciting golf.
Where do you think the hot round is going to be?
Oh gosh.
If you had to guess.
10.
Okay.
It's
all right.
On the tougher side.
Somebody could shoot a 12, somebody could shoot a 5, and we'd all be freaking out. I don't know.
Okay. Well then I think, Cole, while you're here, we're going to do over under. I'm never going to underestimate pros again after OTB and Charlie's disaster where he said he guarantees no one shoots double digits. And I think I won by like 4 strokes. 11.5 is the hot round, over under. Think somebody can shoot a 12 here?
I mean, I did it last weekend, so I'm going to go over.
Call your own shot.
Charlie?
I'll take the under.
Take the under. All right, so Cole and I have the over. Charlie's got the under. 11.5.
Cole, thank you so much for stopping by. Appreciate your time. Good luck this weekend and on towards Champions Cup.
Thanks for having me. Love the show, guys, and looking forward to this weekend.
All right, Cole Redalen with us here on the Upshot. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Upshot. Josh, Cole Redalen, he's definitely got a chance to really do something if he can get over the lead card pressure jitters.
These young players are just so remarkable to me, and we've talked about it with Gannon, we've talked about it with other players, the maturity which they speak about this game. They are the future of the professionalization of this sport, and the way that they approach it and the seriousness with which they take it, and how they consider it very much their profession. And good for him, good for Cole. He's a strong player and a great interview. And so it was a really great opportunity to chat with him about those things.
He'll be in the field at this weekend's Texas States. It's in Houston this year. And so it's over at the Brock Park. And two completely separate FPO and MPO layouts. Not something you see so often. I mean, you sometimes see totally different courses, but this is the same property with two different layouts on it. No shared holes as far as I can tell. So pretty interesting. You heard what Cole had to say about it. It's low ceilings, long holes. There's some holes just looking through the caddy book that I don't feel like I'm going to love particularly. 1,100 foot par 5 that's basically just dead straight. Why? Just make it a par 4. I don't really see the value in adding an extra, tee shotty type shot to the mix. But on the other hand, there's some cool water carries and lots of different shot shapes. Holes left to right, right to left. So should be a good challenge.
I will also add in that kind of. I'm interested to see how they use this OB, because it looks like there's a lot of artificial OB. Hole 1 in particular is this weird index finger shaped, it looks like a little finger, basically just light little bend in it. But it looks like it's only 30 feet wide the entire way down this fairway, 717 feet with a Mando and trees.
We'll see.
Consider me a little bit skeptical about this hole. But on the FPO side, I think there is a nice variety of holes. There is a 198 foot par 3 on hole 5. And remarkably, hole 16, 17, 18, all sub 300 foot par 3s.
Wow.
That is one of, looks like there are 6 sub 300 foot par 3s on this course, but are also paired with a 630 foot par 4. So 651 foot par 4, it looks like actually is the furthest, 54. So there are 3 holes that are 630 feet or farther on par 4s, and there are 6 holes that are less than 300 feet par 3s. I think this sounds like a nice variety. I'm really excited to see how the FPO game attacks this course and what this looks like, because it seems like this might be the variety that we were talking about earlier. Should be an exciting tournament to watch. Remember, they are live streaming all rounds for silver events now.
That's right.
Yeah. So you can catch all the action over on the Disc Golf Network. Central Coast has your post-produced for both divisions, MPO and FPO.
I'm kind of excited about that. When's the last time we saw CCDG have their own Pro Tour level coverage? It's been years.
It feels like it.
I mean, they did, to be fair, they did do some of the production last year for the post-produced that went on the DGPT channel for silver events, but it's just a different thing. It's just different when you're doing it on your own channel. So I'll be excited to see that. It's OGs. So again, this is a silver. This is a pretty good field, though. Similar to how Belton last year was the strongest silver field. I think that this has a chance to be the same thing. I mean, there are some players missing. No Paul McBeth, no Paige Pierce, no Eagle. But there are also a lot of players, a lot of really good players who are in the field. So it should feel like a Pro Tour level tournament. And so, yeah, I think people will be excited to see a new course here. Texas States is cool because it moves around the state. I really like that about this tournament. So, we'll see how it all plays, and look, kind of a lower pressure thing. I think we just was it Gannon that was saying that somebody was just telling me that the silver events, it's nice, like more relaxed part of the tour. I think it was Gannon on Tuesday. So I think, it's a nice break for pros, and it's a nice break for all of us. You don't have to sit there and feel like you got to be glued to all the coverage. Maybe you'll watch it on post-produced.
Right. Well, we've got our over-under, thanks to Cole helping us out with the hot round. So I think that leaves us with our picks, and we just pick winners for silver events, correct?
That's right.
Okay. This makes it both easier and infinitely harder.
Hard to score, but if you do, it's a nice bonus. Okay, wow. I'm looking at the list and I see who you're going to take, and I thought about taking that player. I am going to take Calvin Heimberg to win in MPO. Cole just gave me the extra push that I needed to pick Calvin.
I was so jealous.
So I've got Calvin lined up for the win in MPO. Who you got, Josh?
I've got Joel Freeman. This just screams Butler County again to me, and a chance for Joel to really tear it up. The low ceiling, just really hard shots, but a good variety. I think that Joel is going to excel here, and he seems to excel when there's less pressure. So I really feel like it could be Joel's weekend. Over on the FPO side, I am taking Kristen Tatar. I thought a lot about possibly taking Katrina Allen. I thought a lot about it, but I'm just not ready. And look, like, I think Owen has a good chance to play well here. Missy Gannon has a good chance to play well here. Valerie Mondahano's back in the field. She could play really strong here.
Well, let's maybe depending. She's currently registered. I won't really trust that until we hear from Val that she's playing. But
correct.
Yes.
Sorry. Currently registered, intending on playing. And the list goes on of a lot of really strong players. But Kristen Tatar is the highest rated player in this field by 11 points. And I'm not going to let the off weekend that put her in 5th place at the Open at Austin be enough to scare me away from Kristen yet.
Yeah, I'm taking Kristen too. I feel like she's going to bounce back.
Yeah.
I mean, she posted on her Instagram, the Open at Austin has come to an end, and I can say that for me, it was significant in many ways, bringing up a lot of painful emotions and feelings. First of all, this marks the end of my long streak of podium finishes. Considering how strong the FPO field is, I know this was bound to happen at one point, and I feel no shame in placing in tied for 5th. But what hurts is that my final round was the worst rated round I have played in 1.5 years. I didn't really recognize myself on the course and felt so helpless because it felt like nothing was going my way despite my efforts. But being no stranger to hardships, I know that every challenging experience is a learning opportunity, and that's one of the reasons I can appreciate the times when I feel everything is going exactly how I visualize. Looking forward to finding my energy and focus for next week's event before heading home. So, for Kristen, I just feel like the lower pressure of this environment is going to mean that she comes out and tears it up.
Do you think there's also an advantage to the streak being over?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I think.
Right? Like, not just silver, but the streak is gone, and now she just gets to play.
You don't have to think about it anymore.
All right.
Yeah. I wonder when maybe she's going to go home for like 2 weeks and then come back for Music City, because she is registered for Music City.
Maybe. I'm surprised she's playing this. She's not going home for 3 weeks, to be honest. But
I agree.
She's amazing in a lot of ways.
She's grinding out there.
Yeah.
So, okay, there you go. There's our picks. And we do have Purse Watch for you from the Open at Austin. And so here you go. It's total purse $76,380. That is the lowest this season. Equal MPO winner payout to the last 2 tournaments, though, $7,500. $4,000 for FPO, a little down from Waco's $4,350. Of course, the purse more than doubled from last year from the Open at Belton as it moved up from silver to elite, Josh, but still coming in below that $80,000 mark, which we thought might hold for the year.
Mm-hmm. I think it's always hard to jump from the silver onto the elite series. That's a difficult jump to make always. And so, too bad they missed that 80 mark. I think readjusting it. I'd be surprised. Music City Open is the only other tournament left, in my opinion, that could miss the 80,000 mark. After that, I see no reason why it's not just smooth sailing from there on out.
I think we're going to start seeing a lot of 100K plus tournaments
real quick
in the middle and the late part of the season.
Yeah. Jonesboro, because remember these two, the Waco and LVC were the lowest events previous year. So now you've got Open at Austin and Music City that were previously silver events, now jumping back up. So interesting to watch, but not too far off the mark from Waco. Less than $4,000 off. So
yeah, it's like 5% less basically.
Yeah.
All right. So that is going to do it for today's edition of the Upshot. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will be in our subscriber bonus segment discussing it's Inside the Circle, we call it now. We're going to be discussing spectator experiences from the first 3 events of the season. So looking forward to seeing what people thought of the opening Western events this year. Join us there. You can become a subscriber and join the Discord for less than $4 a month at discgolf.oltworld.com/subscribe on the Upshot.